The message arrived just after midnight, a sharp, mechanical alarm piercing the silence of a secret Soviet bunker. On the glowing screens, a single word flashed in red: launch. It was September 26, 1983, one of the most dangerous years of the Cold War. For decades, the United States and the Soviet Union had lived under the shadow of nuclear annihilation. Both superpowers possessed thousands of warheads, enough to erase entire continents from the face of the Earth. Military strategists had a name for the terrifying balance that kept the peace: mutually assured destruction. If one side attacked, the other would respond. There would be no winners, no survivors, no second chances. Civilization could end in a matter of hours. Deep inside a classified early warning command center near Moscow, Soviet officers were trained to expect the unthinkable. Their job was simple: detect an American missile strike and immediately report it up the chain of command. That report could trigger a full nuclear retaliation. There was no room for doubt, no margin for error. On this particular night, the responsibility rested on one man, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. Petrov was not a typical military officer. He had trained as an engineer and understood the new satellite-based missile detection system he was supervising. Known as OCO, it was designed to spot the intense heat signature of intercontinental ballistic missiles launching from the United States. The system was advanced, but also relatively new, untested in real combat conditions, untested under the weight of history. And on this night, it was about to be tested in the most terrifying way imaginable. At around 12:14 a.m., the calm routine shattered. Sirens blared, lights flickered, computers screamed warnings. The system reported that an American Minuteman missile had been launched toward the Soviet Union. Inside the bunker, tension snapped into existence like a pulled wire. Officers froze. Procedures demanded immediate action. Petrov was required to confirm the alert and report it to his superiors. Within minutes, the Soviet leadership could order a full nuclear retaliation. Every protocol, every drill, every year of training pointed in one direction. But something felt wrong. Petrov stared at the screen. One missile. If the United States were launching a first strike, why only one? Nuclear war planning on both sides assumed massive attacks. Hundreds of missiles meant to overwhelm defenses and guarantee destruction. One missile made no strategic sense. It was not how superpowers ended the world. Then the system updated. Another launch, and another. Soon the screen showed 5 incoming American missiles. The bunker filled with urgency. Red lights flashed across consoles. Telephones rang non-stop. Sweat gathered under stiff military collars. The air itself felt heavier. Breathing felt harder. Every second of hesitation could be catastrophic. The Cold War in 1983 was already dangerously tense. Just weeks earlier, Soviet air defenses had shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007 after it strayed into restricted airspace, killing all 269 people on board, including a U.S. congressman. Western outrage was fierce. Soviet leaders feared retaliation. Meanwhile, NATO was preparing to deploy new Pershing II nuclear missiles in Europe. Distrust between the two superpowers had reached a boiling point. Both sides were watching each other with suspicion, fingers never far from the trigger. War felt closer than ever, and now it felt like it had finally arrived. Now, in this underground room, balanced on a decision, Petrov knew the protocol: report the attack as real. He also knew what would happen next. If Moscow believed the United States had launched nuclear missiles, Soviet commanders might launch their own immediately. Submarines hidden beneath the oceans would fire. Strategic bombers would take off. Within minutes, cities across the northern hemisphere could be turned into radioactive firestorms. Millions, perhaps hundreds of millions, could be dead. An entire civilization, built across centuries, erased in an afternoon, and no one would be left to explain what went wrong. Petrov's heart pounded. He forced himself to think. The satellite system was new. Could it be malfunctioning? Ground radar stations, which would normally confirm incoming missiles, were still silent. But radar detection took time. If he waited too long, it might be too late to respond. The pressure was suffocating. Military doctrine emphasized speed and certainty. Officers were not encouraged to question machines designed by top scientists. Machines did not panic. Machines did not hesitate. Yet Petrov hesitated. He later recalled a chilling realization. He was holding the fate of the world in his hands. The room buzzed with fear. Junior officers looked to him for direction. Some urged immediate reporting. Others watched in silence, understanding the gravity of the moment. 5 missiles, still only 5, and the ground radar still quiet. Petrov made a decision that defied his training. He reported the alert as a false alarm. It was an extraordinary gamble. If he was wrong, the Soviet Union might lose the ability to retaliate. Millions of his own people could die while he stood there, second-guessing a machine. He could be blamed for national catastrophe. He could face court-martial, or worse. Minutes crawled like hours. Everyone waited. If the missiles were real, radar stations would soon confirm them. Impact would follow shortly after. The bunker fell into a strange, heavy silence, the kind that only exists when people are waiting for the world to end. But the confirmation never came. The incoming missiles, they did not exist. The alarm had been triggered by a rare and bizarre combination of natural events. High-altitude clouds over North America had reflected sunlight in just the right way to fool the satellites into detecting what looked like missile launches. The sophisticated system had mistaken the glare of the sun for the flash of nuclear war. Nature itself had nearly pulled the trigger on civilization.
In the fragile architecture of Cold War technology, a cosmic coincidence had nearly ignited Armageddon. Petrov's judgment, his refusal to blindly trust the machines, prevented a potential nuclear response that night. Yet the world would not learn his name for many years. The Soviet Union kept the incident secret. Petrov was quietly questioned and later criticized for failing to properly document the event. He was neither celebrated nor publicly punished. Eventually, he left the military and lived a modest life, largely unknown beyond his small circle. A man who may have saved the world, forgotten by it. Meanwhile, the Cold War continued. Just weeks after the false alarm, tensions rose again during NATO's Able Archer exercise, a routine military drill that Soviet intelligence briefly feared might be a real preparation for nuclear attack. Once more, misunderstandings brought the superpowers dangerously close to conflict. Once more, the world held its breath without knowing it. These incidents revealed an unsettling truth. The nuclear standoff was not only about ideology or military strength, it was also about human perception, technological limits, and sheer luck. In the decades since, historians and security experts have studied the Petrov incident as one of the closest calls in nuclear history. It demonstrated how automated warning systems designed to provide safety through speed could also create new risks, because nuclear strategy often leaves no room for hesitation.
Leaders are trained to make decisions in minutes, sometimes seconds. And yet, on that September night in 1983, hesitation may have saved the world. Petrov himself later described his reasoning with quiet humility. He did not consider himself a hero. He simply trusted his instincts and his understanding that real war would look different from what the screens were showing. His story raises haunting questions. How many times has humanity come close to destruction without realizing it? How much of our survival has depended not on flawless systems, but on flawed humans making courageous choices? The Cold War eventually ended. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. Nuclear arsenals were reduced, treaties signed, tensions eased. The world exhaled. But thousands of nuclear weapons still exist today. Early warning systems remain active. Satellites still watch the skies. Radar stations still scan the horizon. Computers still calculate trajectories of hypothetical missiles that must never be launched. And somewhere, at any given moment, there are people like Stanislav Petrov, ordinary individuals in extraordinary positions, trained to act under unimaginable pressure, because the machinery of deterrence never truly sleeps. The night of September 26, 1983, reminds us that history is not always shaped by presidents or generals, but sometimes by a single quiet decision made in a dimly lit room. A decision to doubt, a decision to wait, a decision to believe that the end of the world should never come so easily. In a conflict defined by fear, suspicion, and nuclear firepower, global survival once depended on the courage of one man to say, "The machines might be wrong."